everyone, and welcome to Utilizing Sales Strategies in a Competitive Job Market webinar. The event will be two parts. Our keynote, John Livesay, will spend about 30 minutes walking us through his lessons on how to answer that daunting "what do you do" question, followed by a short Q&A, and then we'll break up into small rooms for a few sessions of practicing what we just learned. I met John last year and was blown away by how practical and easy it is to remember his storytelling format. In fact, shortly after the webinar I attended, I was asked by our hiring manager, "So tell me, what do you do?" And immediately I was able to use what I learned. You've all read his bio, but in a nutshell, John is an award-winning author, TEDx speaker, podcast series host, and coach. He helps clients turn their case studies into compelling case stories so they win more new business or get that new job. Thanks so much for joining us tonight, John. We are so excited to learn from you. So I'll kick it up to you now.
Thanks, Susie. No shock, I'm going to tell you a story of when I got to meet Michael Phelps. You wonder, how did that happen? Well, I was selling advertising for a fashion magazine owned by Condé Nast, and Speedo was in my territory in Southern California. And they said, "We're coming out with a line of sportswear." And so I said, "Oh, would you ever consider running that in my fashion magazine?" And they said, "No, we're going to run it in a fitness magazine." And I said two magic words for those of you who like to take notes. You might want to write this down. What if? I said, what if we treated your sportswear like it was high fashion? And we could have a fashion show with the models wearing sportswear around a hotel swimming pool, and you could invite Michael Phelps since he's on your payroll. They liked the idea, and I got some advertising that was unexpected and not projected. But more importantly for me as a former lifeguard, I got to meet Michael Phelps. And I said to him, "Michael, everyone says you're such a great swimmer because your lung capacity is bigger than the average person and your feet are like fins. I'm guessing there's something else." He said, "Oh, yes, John. When I was younger, my coach said to me, 'Michael, are you willing to work out on Sundays?' 'Yes, coach.' 'Great. We just got 52 more workouts in a year than your competition.'" The question becomes for all of you looking for work, looking for a job. What are you willing to do that other candidates aren't? Or more importantly, what are you willing to do that they haven't thought to do? An example of that was when I was working with Banana Republic, and they had said, "We'd love to up our brand image of luxury, but we're never going to be Neiman Marcus with our price point or what we can deliver in terms of service. But we want to do something. We've defined luxury as an unexpected thing you get. Doesn't necessarily cost anything." So what they decided to do was put a charging station in their big stores in Union Square in San Francisco and the Rockefeller Center store in New York. That way, when people went into the store to shop, they could charge their phone. It was an unexpected luxury. It upped the level of the brand. The unexpected outcome was sales went up in those two big stores because people waited for their phones to fully charge before they finished shopping. They kept shopping. "Oh, the phone needs another 20 minutes. I guess I'll keep looking." And so when you think like an Olympic athlete and that your particular event, if you will, your particular sport is competing for a job in this job market, and how do you get that gold medal? How do you get more than one offer? It starts by thinking of what you can do that your competition isn't willing to do or hasn't thought to do. Now, as Susie mentioned, my passion is to help as many people as possible become storytellers. I usually travel. Now I'm doing it virtually and sharing how important it is. In fact, Plato said storytellers rule the world. It's just as true today as it was back then, and he didn't have to compete against the distractions from the internet. So my premise is whoever tells the best story is the person that's memorable and ironically the one that gets the job. Because think about it, whether you're selling yourself in an interview or you're selling a product or service or whatever you're doing, we all have to sell ourselves, even if that's not our title, an idea to get something implemented, to get promoted. There's always that meeting after the meeting. Clearly, you know you're not the only candidate. If you get a face-to-face interview or even a virtual one, you know you're probably in the top 2 or 3 candidates. But then after they've done that, they have another meeting, the meeting after the meeting. And what happens in that meeting? Well, they say, well, you know, what did you think of Susie versus Craig versus John? And if you've told a story and brought your experience or a situation to life in such a way that you've told a story that makes you memorable, that they can repeat that story as to why they think you'd be the best cultural fit, that's what's going to set you apart from everyone else who is not telling stories and just sticking to the facts and figures of what they do. Now, during this pandemic, we all have a choice. Do we want to be an ostrich and not even try to interview? Just bury our head. Let me know when this whole pandemic's over and everyone's been vaccinated, please. Or do we want to be peacocks? Peacocks actually make themselves bigger to scare off predators. But in your case, you want to let the world know, hey, I'm here. I'm the perfect person for this job. I've got what it takes now. So just in the chat, type in O or P. Let me know how you're feeling. Now, it's okay if it changes moment by moment. Sometimes you may start the day as a peacock and feel like an ostrich. I just want to bury my head under the covers. But lots of peacocks here. Well, that's no surprise based on where you all went to such a prestigious school. Sometimes an ostrich. Okay, Virginia, it's fine. But this ostrich versus peacock is such a valuable mindset for you to remember, what are you choosing to think and do? And when you have that going on, you're in charge of what you're thinking. Now, the biggest problem I see happening is that people think that in order to get hired, you have to get people, we've heard it 100 times, oh, you got to get people to know, like, and trust you, right? That's the only way people are ever going to buy anything from you or hire you. Unfortunately, what happens is that belief causes a behavior of pushing out information. Oh, let me tell you everything about me. So we're going to flip the order. We're going to start with trust. It's a gut thing. In order for someone to hire you, they have to trust you first. And the gut is really a fight or flight response. Is this email safe? You know, you all trusted Susie. Susie trusted me. That trust is transferred. That's why warm introductions, any person you have in common with the person interviewing you, is so important. Remember, you know, when we shook hands, it was to show we didn't have a weapon in our hand. It was that much of it is safe to be here. The fight or flight response can shut off. And then once we go from the gut, it goes to the heart. Likability. There's a great book called The Likability Factor by Tim Sanders. The premise is the research shows that doctors spend more time with patients they like. Students spend more time with, teachers spend more time with students they like. Even in the workplace, you're less likely to get laid off if they like you. Sometimes it even supersedes seniority. So how do we up our likability factor? It's showing empathy. Literally visualize yourself putting on the empathy hat. The better you can describe what a company that you're interviewing at is experiencing in terms of challenges, whether it's competition or the market or whatever the industry is, the better they think you might have their solution. So your ability to describe a problem makes people think you have their solution. And then it goes from the gut to the heart to the head. And even then, that is not an invitation or a license or a monopoly go of, oh, let me tell you everything about me now. Here's the unspoken question people have when they're interviewing you or when they're thinking of whether they want to buy something from you. Will this work for me? Will this person fit into our culture? Will this person be able to do the job that their resume says they have the skills to do, but will they be able to do this, and will they be somebody that I want to have on my team? So gut, heart, head is, for you note takers, is the way to remember how to establish rapport that will prevent you from pushing out a bunch of information that people are going to forget. So my promise to you in this session we have today is I'm going to show you how to tell a story in a way that makes you both magnetic and memorable. Because the old way is, let me push out a bunch of information about me and my background and what I did at my other jobs, as opposed to let me tell you a story and pull you into that story so that you could see yourself in the story and how I would fit into this particular position better than anyone else, especially if you're the only one telling the story. What happens when we don't prepare? For that question that Susie mentioned, hey, tell me about yourself. Bring your resume to life. You know you're going to get asked that question. Don't be a deer in headlights. What? It's what an unexpected question. We know we're going to get asked that question. So the more prepared you are, Arthur Ashe, the famous tennis pro, said the key to success is preparation. And the key to that preparation is what gives you the confidence. So when you are prepared, you build your confidence and that builds your success. So don't try to wing it. Don't try to say, oh, I'll just figure out what I'm going to say when they say, bring my resume to life. It's a story. It's got a beginning, a middle, and an end. When I was interviewing for a job at the Daily Beast, which was owned by Barry Diller's company, IAC, and Tina Brown had launched it, I had a phone interview, and the guy on the phone he was in New York and I was in LA. And he said, tell me about yourself. How did you get into this advertising world? And I had known that even though it was a while ago, I needed to start my story at the beginning. And I also knew that a lot of New Yorkers felt that everyone who lived in California was a little flaky. So I said, well, I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago, went to school at the University of Illinois, and I brought my Midwest values of integrity and showing up on time to California. And he said, oh, I understand. I lived in Chicago for a year. Boom. We bonded over something. Had I not started my personal story at the beginning, that would never have come out. And I was also handling an unspoken objection that people in New York have as a general rule about people they hire in California. So when you have preparation of what you're going to say and how you're going to tell your story, you don't stumble like this. The other problem is, and this is where I'm going to ask everyone, if you don't mind, turn on your cameras. I'd love to see, I'm going to put it in gallery view so I can see as many of you as possible. Pretend like you're praying, oh, I really need this job. Right? Let me see you fold your hands in whatever way you would do that. Now try to do it the other way. Try to interlace your fingers the opposite way. Isn't it funny? One way feels more relaxed and normal. Now cross your arms like, how dare they not hire me? Don't they know who I am? Now try to put it the other way. Oh my gosh, that feels like I'm asking you to do a Houdini move, doesn't it? So we all have a way of interacting with ourselves and the world. So if I'm asking you to not start your interviews with facts and figures and start with a story like I did this talk, it might feel a little awkward at first. But I promise you, if you practice starting a story, it'll get more and more comfortable, because what's going on? People buy emotionally and then back it up with logic. And make no mistake of it, when you're interviewing, you're selling yourself. They're going to buy emotionally. Do I like this person? Do I trust this person? Do I think this person has a good work ethic? All of those things are part of it. So there's been some debate here about the biases that Californians have and back and forth. I lived in LA many years myself. It's person specific, but a lot of people like to generalize. So if you happen to be in New York and you're interviewing at a New York firm, obviously that's not an issue. But for those of you who might be interviewing out of state, I think it's important to have an awareness of what people might assume about where you live. So the next part of this is, we don't want to bore somebody during an interview. We don't need you don't need to read to them what's on your resume already. You need to tell a story and bring it to life, because when you don't have an emotional connection and all you talk about is how much you raise sales and percentages or something like that, then you're just boring people. They're not going to, but when you tell a story, you have an emotional connection. And when you have preparation, you can soar through your interview. You're not going to stumble through it. Now, again, for you note takers, here's what you want what I'm going to call it an elevator story as opposed to an elevator pitch. It should be clear, it should be concise, and it should be compelling. If it's not clear, the confused mind never says yes. And they're not going to tell you they don't understand what you just said. If you're using acronyms that may not be familiar to them, if you're going on and on and on and they ask you a question, you want to have a collaborative conversation with the person interviewing you, not a 10-minute monologue. And finally, compelling. When you tug at people's heartstrings, they open their purse strings. And let's face it, we're asking them to open their purse strings. Even if they have money budgeted, you might want more than what's budgeted. And even if that does meet your requirements, you're asking them to give you the money instead of somebody else. Now, a lot of people say, oh man, when I get interviewed, even if it's on the phone or virtual, I get really nervous. I get butterflies in my stomach. So for those of you who aren't looking at my screen, you'll want to look at the screen. There's a special effect happening here. Butterflies are literally flying across my screen in 3D. We don't want to get rid of the butterflies in your stomach. It just means it's game on. It's your Olympic moment. It's time for you to just say to yourself, oh, nervous energy. I'm going to get that out of my stomach and into the room and make a gesture. And I'm going to get out of my head worrying about whether they like me or not and be here and talk about why I want this job and why I'm the best person for it. Now, nothing says confidence to me like Lady Gaga. This is her at the Academy Awards a few years ago singing from Sound of Music, I have confidence and confidence in me. So what I want you to do to help you for your next interview is write down 2 or 3 times when you knew you nailed something. You applied to Chicago booth, you got in. You asked somebody out on a date, you got a second date. All of those, another job you got a yes for. Stack those moments of certainty like you're the air traffic controller of your own life. And when you write down those moments and the feelings, I felt happy, proud, confident, enthusiastic, passionate, that's what you want to put in your head, as opposed to the negative self-talk, I'll never get this job, there's so much competition, there's so blah, 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 I'm too young, I'm too old, whatever our minds can make up to tell that story. You get to be the director of the movie of your life and yell cut at any minute. And you can recast it, you can change the location. When you realize you're the thinker thinking the thoughts aren't thinking you, and you're stacking your moments of certainty in your head before you have this virtual interview or in person, then your confidence is going to go up. Now, this is a slide that I want you to think of in terms of where do the employees see you on this ladder? Especially if you're applying blindly. Are you invisible? They've never heard of you before? Or maybe they saw your resume or somebody suggested you, but they go, well, that's not the person the background we're looking at. It's insignificant. But maybe you've gotten through that initial hurdle and you're at the interesting rung. And think of it like dating. You know, sometimes you go into a party, you see somebody you're attracted to, they don't even know you're in the room, or they see you and you're insignificant. I don't know what's worse. But maybe in the world of dating again, you say something clever or funny and they go, oh, I'm interested. I'm not going out with you yet, but I'm at least interested. So if you're in the position of applying for a job and you say something interesting in your subject line or in your email, in your follow-up, you do something that makes you interesting, and they said, okay, we're interested, we might have another interview, you get all excited. And then you don't hear anything. It's like being stuck at the friend zone at work. So how do you get out of that? You tell a story that makes them lean in and gets them to be intrigued enough. And in the dating world, again, that's where you paint a picture of what it would be like to go on the first date. And in the world of business, you saw how I told that story of getting Speedo to advertise. I intrigued them with a what if scenario that they hadn't even considered. They were intrigued to know more. And then, of course, Irresistible, we all know what that feels like in the dating world, where you can't stop thinking of the person, and you're texting them and they're texting you. And then we have people that love us like that, former bosses. Here's this key here. Don't take any relationship for granted, but certainly not the people that they might be contacting for references, even if you haven't considered giving them as references. Make sure you're keeping those relationships warm and that you're not taking them for granted. If you want someone to give you some kind of review or reference way above the norm and be as enthusiastic as the day you were hired, you need to keep in touch with them. Little thing, don't forget their birthdays, all the social media tools we have now to do that. Post in the chat where you think your biggest challenge is on this ladder when getting a job. Is it, I can get to interesting, I just can't get them intrigued enough for the next interview? What's happening based on your interviewing process now that this ladder can help you start to see where you are? Stuck at interesting from Melissa. Can't get the interview at all. Understood. You're invisible. Okay. Intriguing. Oh, okay. You're getting up there. Interesting. How did age issues? Okay. Interesting and intriguing. And invisible, no connections where I want to be. Invisible as well. All right. Well, this is a roadmap for getting your dream job. And when you put your empathy hat on, you can start realizing where you need to go. It's like very rarely does anybody meet somebody at a coffee date and ask for them a proposal at the same time. So if you're down at invisible or insignificant, it might be a little unrealistic to think you're going to get a job offer in the next 30 days. So just work on what can I do that will get me up to the next step. So now we're going to continue to talk about what makes us irresistible. Part of it is having an elevator story instead of an elevator pitch so that people remember you. And even if they couldn't hire you, they could refer you to somebody who could. So a lot of people tell me, oh, you know what? I don't really have a story. Like, really? You've never made a mistake in your life? You've never had a bad family meal at a holiday? You've never had a plane ride that didn't go well? We all have a story. We have a story of origin. And those story of origins, whether this is what made me decide to major in this, or this is what I loved about Chicago Booth, that's a grounding story that tells us in the story something about you that makes us see your character as opposed to you just saying, I'm someone who works hard. Tell us a story of how hard you had to work to get the scholarship or get a job while going to school. Tell us, paint a picture that makes us see your characteristics come alive. Now, the other part of this, of bringing your resume to life, is, oh, well, you know, when I was at XYZ company, I did this and this and this. We grew sales by that amount, or whatever you did. You saved the company X amount of money. That's a typical case study. Or in the sales world, when they present, they, you know, talk about it in terms of case studies. And even the word study sounds like homework to me. Now, if you're not looking at the screen, you might want to look because there's a Wizard of Oz moment coming. We're going to turn those boring case studies into a case story, because a story comes to life. And a case story is what's going to show you how to transform things. Now, this works when you're trying to get new business, and it works when you're trying to get hired. I worked with Gensler, which is the world's largest architecture firm, and they were competing against two other firms to renovate the Pittsburgh airport. And they had an hour to come in and present, much like you have an hour to come in sometimes virtually and present yourself in an interview, or maybe you have multiple interviews within an hour. They had some great before and after pictures, some lots of data about square footage, but no story. So a story has four parts, again, for you note takers. The exposition, who, what, where, when. Paint that picture for me. Let me see where the details of the story are. Then you describe the problem. Remember, the better you describe the problem, the better somebody thinks you have the solution. And then the resolution. That's the secret to any great story. What is life like after someone's hired you or worked with you? So I'm going to give you the Gensler story, and then I'm going to tell you a story that helped me get a job at the Daily Beast. Gensler, when they were presenting, said, you know, 3 years ago, JetBlue at JFK hired us to renovate that terminal. Boom. That's the exposition. We know where we are, how long ago, all that. One of the challenges we faced is we had to rip off all the tile in the middle of the night and rewire everything. and between 9 at night and 9 in the morning. And, you know, we had to get that done so the stores wouldn't lose revenue. We had all our vendors on call in case something went wrong. And sure enough, at 2 in the morning, a fuse blew. We had that vendor there in 30 minutes. They fixed everything. And at 8:59, the last tile went down. All the stores opened on time. And now a year later, sales are up 15% because we've designed a place that pulls people in and keeps them shopping more. So you know the exposition, the problem. The old way of doing that would have been corporate speak. We use critical thinking to anticipate problems. Don't be that person that says that about yourself in the interview situation. Show it in a story. In this case, the vendors were on call. A little bit of drama. 8:59 is when the last tile went down. The solution is the store is all open, but the resolution, why the client hired them and remembered it, was what was life like afterwards? Oh, you measure the sales before your design and after your design so we can track that this investment we're making is going to bring us more money. Now, here's the story I used to get a job at the Daily Beast. When I was selling advertising for W Magazine, a high-end fashion magazine, Jaguar had said they wanted people to start thinking of their car as moving sculpture. And they invited several magazine salespeople to come in and present some ideas. And based on the best idea, they would give that magazine the advertising. So I said, moving sculpture. That speaks to the art world. You want people who have an artistic sensibility. So we have a party coming up around the Golden Globes. We could target 10 couples that are subscribers that have a lease coming up in a competitive model like a Mercedes or BMW, pick them up in a Jaguar that you provide, take them to our Golden Globes party, and then they'll be taken from that party to a private dining room in a restaurant. Well, they will be talking with somebody from the Museum of Modern Art about art, and someone from Jaguar could be at that dinner, and Jaguar would literally become part of the conversation of Jaguar and art. And in between courses, somebody could test drive yet another model. They loved the idea. I got the advertising, and Jaguar sold 2 cars that night. That's the structure. You know the exposition, the problem Jaguar has, and what I have as a challenge as a salesperson to come up with something that's relevant to their challenge. The solution is described, but the resolution was, I got the advertising, Jaguar sold 2 cars. That's a memorable case story that allowed the Daily Beast to go, wow, that's the kind of thinking we need here to make our sales work as well. All right. Now we're going to talk about how we can fix the elevator pitch and turn it into an elevator story. There are problems that if you say something that's not really interesting, you bore people. Okay, that sounds like a really whatever. And you want to inspire them. You want to, you don't go from confusing them to giving them clarity of, oh, I totally get what you do. And you don't want to stumble because you want to be prepared so you can soar through it with a lot of confidence. So when we are going to fix a few elevator stories in the breakout session, you'll get a sense of how this all works. So for example, I've come up with 5 steps, and I'm going to give you my elevator story. The first 3 steps are all done in 1 sentence. The big mistake people make on their elevator pitch, elevator story is, oh, I'm an accountant, I'm a doctor, I'm an attorney, I'm a this, I'm a that. It's not about you. And it also comes across sometimes very robotic. So I've solved that by a very conversational starting point that sounds like this. You know how salespeople struggle not to be seen as a commodity. I'm known as the pitch whisperer, and companies hire me to come in and show their teams how to tell stories that win new business, because whoever tells the best story is the one that gets the business. And after my talk and online course, people become black belts in storytelling, which allows them to get hired or become revenue rock stars. That's the structure of how this works. And if anybody wants to be brave enough to volunteer and work with me really quickly, you don't have to be perfect. I will help you. I can give you another example. I worked with someone who was a patent attorney, and she was looking for another job in that field. And so we went into, you know how a lot of companies struggle, you see how I use the word struggle, to keep their intellectual property from being stolen, or, well, as an intellectual property lawyer, when I was working at American Express, you know, I was able to X, Y, and Z. And so now American Express knows that when they have someone like me on, had somebody like me on their team, that their intellectual property was in fact safe. So we go, oh, I totally get what that is. So if we're going to be doing these in the breakout rooms. Yes.
Looks like we have a taker. We have a self-nominated volunteer, Jeff. I'm going to guess mate.
Yes.
I'm not sure how to say your last name.
Jeff with a G. I love that. I love Jeff's with a G. There's a restaurant in Malibu that's called Joffrey's. It's spelled like that.
Nice.
All right, let's hear. First of all, bravo for.
Oh, I didn't know what I was doing even, but I'm just volunteering. So
yeah, take advantage of this. Remember, a lot of you might think you have to be perfectionists. And I want to invite you to think of yourself as a progressionist, somebody who celebrates progress. All we're trying to do is get your elevator story just slightly better than it was 30 minutes ago. So,
nice. Well, I spent my whole day preparing for an interview tomorrow. So I figured if I don't volunteer now, then.
Right. So just follow the steps on the screen here, Jeff. And
okay.
So literally start it with you know how, and then go into who you help. And we'll see how you
All
go.
right. Well, you know how when you're trying to build your business and things just start to get out of control, who do you help? What is that what I'm doing?
Right. So let me ask you a couple questions. First of all, what kind of job are you applying for? What is it you do?
Well, I'm a entrepreneur, operator. I've had chief operating officer roles. I'm real passionate about developing and scaling entrepreneurial businesses.
Okay. So you're trying to get entrepreneurs to hire you, correct? As a chief operating officer?
I have an interview with Amazon tomorrow for a senior business coach role. But
okay. So. Well, you would customize that elevator story for them, but you could let's stick with the main thing of, instead of it being Amazon specific, generic entrepreneurs. You say, you know how entrepreneurs struggle to scale their business? They have a little bit of traction and then they get stuck. What I do is I come in and I show them, give them a roadmap, because the skills that got them the first 10 clients are not going to give them the next 100,000 clients. And there's operational glitches that they don't even know, and speed bumps that they're going to hit, and ditches they're going to fall in without my help. But when you have someone like me who's been there before and done it, and I can show them exactly what to do to avoid all the mistakes, their business scales twice as fast than it would without someone like me who knows the operations background. Because try to imagine Amazon scaling without having their computer systems in place. It wouldn't have happened. And let's all remember, Amazon just sold books first before they scaled everything else. And so life for the entrepreneur after hiring someone like me is they get peace of mind and their dreams exceed their expectations. So see how there's some emotion around that? And it's all about them, who you're helping, and what's life like after and what's life like before. Peace of mind, the dreams bigger than, and then giving a little Amazon thing in there for you, since, that'll give you some frame of reference as well. Yes?
Love it. Thank you.
You are welcome. All right. Well, I did want to let anyone know who does have challenges coming up, whether it's a big interview or even getting on the ladder. I offer an online course with some quizzes where you can learn how to become a storyteller. And I think we all need to become more memorable on these interviews, because as soon as you leave, if you haven't told a story, they forget you. That magic question to ask on an interview, and this is for you, Jeff, and some other people that I saw in the chat here. All of us get asked this question in an interview. All right, we've asked you a lot of questions, Jeff. Do you have any questions for us here at Amazon? Obviously, young people will say, yeah, when does my vacation start? Sadly, none of you are going to do that. But instead of the typical question that you might ask, I have my clients ask this question and get hired on the spot. And the question is, what would it look like if I was to exceed your expectations a year from now? Boom. Your future pacing them, visualizing you in it, they might even have to think about that. They haven't even, they're just trying. It shows instead of tells that you're the kind of person that exceeds expectations. Does that make sense, Jeff and everybody else? Yeah. And then and then of course, how do we go from being invisible to irresistible? No matter where you are in the process. What do you got the interview. What are you going to say story-wise in your follow-up email that's going to really make them go, we need to hire Jeff? So the investment to work with me is $9.97. There's also different payment plans, which make it affordable for people. But I also give a 30-day guarantee because I really want to help people. And if it's not working, no harm, no foul. But there's little modules on your mindset. How do you tell a story? How do you get your confidence up? Figuring out how to position yourself to even get the interview, and then of course what to do on the interview. And then finally, there's a private Facebook group where people love the chance to practice their elevator story and or their case stories that they're telling in an interview, and what to say after those interviews, and not to be afraid to ask, what's the next steps? Is there anything that would prevent you from going forward with me or recommending me? And it takes a lot of confidence to do that in a way that's not confrontive. So I show you how to be persuasive without being pushy in interviews. So my assistant, Kristen, will throw in the chat the landing page for any of you who want to explore that. And I think there it is. If you have questions about that, of course, let me know. But now I want to go back to, if anybody enrolls today, I want to give a one-on-one hour with me. So you can see what I did with Jeff in just a few minutes. Imagine if I spent an hour with you, in addition to what you get in the course, to help you get these dream jobs. Really, who could put a dollar value on that? Because I'm sure all of you are working for some nice income based on your great education you got at Chicago Booth. So remember those 5 steps. You know how, then you describe who you help. It's still not about you. And insert the word struggle to describe their problem. And then finally, what you do to solve it. And then the secret sauce, what is life like after you've done it? So now if there's any questions before you guys go into breakout rooms to actually practice this format, feel free to post it in the chat and we'll answer them before we go into breakout.
Yeah, thanks so much, John. I found, every time I've heard you, which now is the second time, but I am betting it's not going to be the last time, I learn more, and it's just so practical. It really helped when I had my interview, actually. So thanks so much. We really appreciate it. You guys, before we break out into rooms, Denise breaks us out into rooms to practice. Does anybody have any questions that they want to ask? If you want to type it into the chat, now's the time. Otherwise, we will go ahead. Denise, are you ready to break people out into rooms of 4? And for those of you who prefer not to practice and meet new people, that's totally okay too. We know that sometimes you need to take a little step back and process everything. So that's okay too. You can just drop off now so that Denise doesn't put you in a room.
Right. And we have 2 free gifts for everybody. The first gift is a free cheat sheet that my assistant Kristen will post in the chat here. It's on a Google Doc, and it's really a summary of what I just did on the steps to have a great elevator story. So you could look at that while you're in the breakout rooms. And if I know Kristen, she's customized it with the Chicago Booth logo. So that's and stay to the very end and I'll give you guys another free gift.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, we're almost ready here.
Perfect. I think maybe we can do 2 10-minute rounds, Denise?
Yeah, that should work. Yeah, they should be rooms of 3 to 4 people, so everybody should get a chance. And okay, let me do a little finagling.
Perfect.
Hopefully everyone can get the Google Doc open.
And while we're doing that, John, I did data analytics at Macy's. And so when the hiring manager asked me before, I would have gone into some details around data analytics. But then I remember how you said, do you know how you need data to make the consumer sing and come to your store and choose you over another store? And I totally used it and he loved it and he totally understood, because sometimes data is hard hard for people to understand. What does that mean? That so many people are using the words data and analytics and consumer insight. So it was very helpful.
I'm so glad you did that. Remember, I love turning text speeds and feeds into stories. While we're waiting for the breakout rooms, I'll give you another example. I worked with Olympus Medical, and I said to their salesperson, what are you saying to the doctors to get them to buy this equipment? Oh, it makes the equipment, the surgeries go 30% faster. Do you want one? Data. Like, what does it even mean? So I asked a bunch of questions, and now the story is this. Imagine how happy Dr. Higgins was down at Long Beach Memorial using our equipment. He could go out to the patient's family in the waiting room. And if you've ever waited for somebody you love to come out of surgery, you know every minute feels like an hour. And he came out an hour earlier than expected and put them out of their waiting misery and said, good news, the scopes show they don't have cancer. And then the doctor turned to the rep and said, you know what? So I became a doctor for moments like this. Now that salesperson can tell that case story to another doctor at another hospital who sees themselves in the story and says, you know what, that's why I became a doctor. I want your equipment too. And Olympus said to me, gosh, that gives us chills. Not only are we not telling stories, it never occurred to us to make a patient's family a character in a story. So for all of you who decide you want to work with me and the course and the Facebook group to become a master storyteller, I will pull those stories out of you that are data-centric and figure out the right character so we're tugging at people's heartstrings and helping them tap into the purpose of what they do. In the case of Macy's, I mean, what an amazing story of origin that brand has. And so if you can show data that taps into that, especially around the holidays, then that would be an advantage when that's where the majority of sales happen. So making it all specific like that is what I love to help people do.
Okay. And on that note, so we're going to open the breakout rooms. It looks like we'll be able to do 2 rounds of maybe 8 minutes. So there should be 2 or 3 of you in a room. And Paul, Susie, Kristen, I have you in one just because I had to put you in one. So just come back to the main room when you get kicked in there. Okay, enjoy.
Perfect.
And okay. All right, take it away, John.
How was that? Did you feel like you were learning to ride a bike for the first time or driving stick shift for the first time? That's normal. Post in the chat if you have any questions. You can see here on the screen the cheat sheet we've created for you to have these steps that you, and they're going to email them out to you as a PDF as well. But in the short term, you now can see them all here. But if anybody had any questions, somebody's typing away.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. Either take yourself off mute or post it in the chat about, oh, I was fine up until the resolution part, or I'm still struggling with how to describe my solution, or whatever your question might be. I'm here to answer them for you on how to make these elevator stories clear, concise, and compelling. Anybody want to say a question? How long an interactive and previous company? Okay, that's Craig's question. 3 questions from Craig. The elevator story should only be around 60 to 90 seconds. And the goal is to get people intrigued enough to say, wait, that's interesting, tell me more. So the 60 to 90 seconds, it becomes interactive after those 60 to 90 seconds. And you can say, as part of your solution, where you worked before, but only as it ties into the problem that you solved for your ideal person or that company's challenge. And then how do we transition from question 3 to 4? So the example I gave you with Jaguar was their problem was they didn't know how to make people think of the car as moving sculpture. That was their problem. My solution is what I said. So what we did, and then I described how we created that whole experience during Golden Globes and being picked up and taken to a restaurant. So that transition can be as simple as, so what we did at XYZ company to solve Jaguar's problem was that. So hopefully those answered some questions. Do we use these techniques in our, yes, you can completely, Hugh, use these techniques. Sometimes in a cover letter, it can be a tad more formal than a conversation of you know how, but you could, reframe that in a cover letter of, let's say you work in healthcare. One of the things that a lot of healthcare companies are struggling with today is getting appointments because they can't see the doctor at the hospital like they used to. And then you would go into what your solution is. So that's how you could adapt this to a cover letter. And it can also be adapted for your LinkedIn profile on your About page. A lot of people are using it for that. Any other questions on the elevator story? What I promised you all another gift. If you take out your phone and literally text, like you're sending a text message to a friend, except that the number is 66866 and it's on the slide here. Denise, if you can make that full screen so they can read it better, and then type in the word pitch, P-I-T-C-H, in the message part, then you'll get a free ebook from me of my top storytelling tips that will help you learn how to be a master storyteller in your personal life and in your career, getting a job once you have the job. And it'll just be another way for us to connect and go on a journey together. And then, of course, for those of you who are interested in really working with me in the group setting in my Facebook group for my students, Kristen will post that link again for the landing page for the Better Selling Through Storytelling online course. Christine says you're still struggling to balance how specific the data is shared versus sticking to the big picture challenge. Well, without knowing specifically what the challenge is, I would say get the whole goal of the elevator story, elevator pitch is to get people intrigued enough to say, tell me more. And that's when you would get into the specific data. So if you can say something that intrigues them, did you know that, 5% of people who are working from home can't wait to get back to the office? Maybe you thought it would be higher. Whatever that would be, you could slip that in there as an intriguing fact, but don't make your story full of data. You can use data at the opening for a surprise. Your brain is always craving something it doesn't know. And when you give people information they don't know, it's like, whoa, wait, maybe I should pay attention. So hopefully that answered that question. So again, you've got my cheat sheet on how to have an elevator story. You can text the word pitch to get the free ebook on storytelling. And then again, if you really want to be a master black belt at it, because let's face it, as Plato said, storytellers rule the world. And in this marketplace, it's competitive. Storytelling is even more important in a virtual world because stories cut through all of the distractions people are having on a virtual call and tug at those heartstrings to make them want to hire you. Any other last minute questions before we close at the top of the hour? I want to thank Susie and Denise for inviting me and being so wonderful and coordinating all this. It's been a privilege and an honor. And I just want all of you to realize that what you have to offer is valuable. And whether you get the job or not, your identity stays the same. Don't let a rejection make you feel less than who you are, because the world needs people like you who are talented and educated to make a difference. Thanks.
Thanks so much, John. I mean, it's really so impressive and so helpful. The hour flew by, and I know our alumni were really excited. I had so many people email me on the side in the chat bar saying how great the content was. So thank you so much. We really appreciate it. So with that, thank you all for sticking around. The time went by so fast, we didn't get to do a second round, but we do have our coffee hour. It's actually the happy hour on Friday. So if you want to practice, you can always do that on Friday. Go to the Google Calendar, sorry, not the Google Calendar, the Booth calendar to sign up for our happy hour. Thanks, everyone. Hope to see you soon. And thanks so much, John, Kristen. We really appreciate it.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Take care.